it's Alex here with the OnStage Colorado podcast with Tony Tresca. Hey, Tony.
Hey, Alex. Great to be talking with you this morning.
Yeah, so we are talking on May 3rd. We just, the night before, we saw The Hot Wing King at the Denver Center. And this is a Denver Center Theatre Company production. I guess this is their last one of the season, right?
That's right. Yeah, this is the final production of the DCPA Theatre Company's 2024-2025 season.
Yeah, so today's podcast is we're just gonna focus on this one show review, and we'll be back next week with our regular slate of our gala festivities of all the stuff we usually do on the podcast. So I would have said, just right off the bat, The Hot Wing King was a lot of fun. It's a really well done show. So this is a play written by a woman, Katori Hall, about a bunch of guys, and I thought, I was impressed by that, I thought she had a lot of great insight into masculinity. Of course, this is the cast are mostly gay Black men. There's a couple of straight guys in there. So this runs through May 25th at the Killstrom Theater, which is in the Round or in the Pentagon Theater there. It's about 2.5 hours with an intermission directed by Timothy Douglas, who I think was last seen directing The Color Purple at DCPA.
That's right. Yeah. And Timothy Douglas he's quite familiar to audiences at the Denver Center. He's done quite a bit of work there, as well as around the country. He's a pretty accomplished Black director. And he's assembled quite a cast here, 6 very strong performers, all black men. And they're, like you mentioned, the play, even though it is called The Hot Wing King, and it's set around this cooking competition that these men are participating in, it's really an exploration of kind of masculinity and Black love.
Yeah, it is. The basic plot is that the character of Cordell, is played by Terrence Archie, is working on his recipe to win the Memphis Hot Wang Festival. And he's recently located from, was it Seattle that he came from?
He's left his family back in St. Louis for Dwayne.
Okay, so Dwayne, yeah. So he's a hotel manager, and it's his house that we're in, right? And so he's got this little sort of coterie of guys around. One of them is his barber, Big Charles, played by Tobias A. Young, and another character named Issam, who is played by Isaiah Tyrell Boyd, who is the comic relief. And boy, is he! He is very, very funny. He's just a live wire.
And super well costumed. He's got a bunch of different designer labels all over him. He's got a Gucci bag that he's very proud of. And like you said, he's very much kind of the comic relief of the play. We find out that he and Big Charles may have had a fling at one point. But Big Charles is not as into the commitment as Issam he's pressing him to be a little bit more committed and maybe think a little bit more seriously about relationships. But that's just not Big Charles' prerogative. He's a football fan. Yeah. He's much more focused on watching the game.
Absolutely, yeah. So Isaiah Tyrell Boyd was just so much fun to watch, and his ass was almost like another character, and he's very proud of it. He was shaking it all over the place.
That's a really good way to say it, Alex. Yeah, it is almost another character.
Yeah, it's very prominent. And so the other characters are Dwayne's brother TJ Deo Oladokun, I'm sorry if I'm murdering that, and his son Everett, who's played by Jacques Jean-Marie. So everything's going pretty well with this preparing for the festival until TJ shows up with a bag of cash to give to Dwayne, saying, "Hey, my son may show up here," and indeed Everett does. And so that kind of sets off a whole lot of, Sturm und Drang, because, Cordell is really not interested in having a child around to have to deal with, because he's left his family and his wife to be with Dwayne. So there's all that stuff going on.
Yeah, it feels almost soap opera-esque in kind of the how all of this moment that we've dropped in on is the bubbling up of all of these kind of family tensions, personal tensions. Cordell is super conflicted because he's left his family back in St. Louis. He's not being super honest with him or his family, his friends who he's left behind about why. He's also, it's interesting, he doesn't ever use the label of gay for himself, but he has left his heterosexual marriage to be in a relationship with a man. It's interesting. I think that a lot of plays that focus on queer themes focus a lot on labels and kind of figure and identity, and this play has a much more fluid understanding of that, I think, which really is really, really refreshing to see, and allows for a lot more, I think, complex character interactions. The fact that they're queer and they're in these relationships, that's just treated very matter of fact. That's not really the
Exactly.
thing we're exploring. We're exploring how they feel about these kind of situations that they found themselves, because Cordell, in many ways, feels like he has left a life where he had left a life where he felt, even though he was in a kind of a loveless marriage, he had a lot of freedom to do what he wants. And now he doesn't have a job. He's moved here, and all he has is this relationship with Dwayne, who he's very busy. He's working as a hotel manager, so he doesn't exactly have time to stay at home and keep Cordell occupied all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it really is interesting about that, how it is matter of fact. It's not a theme of the play. There is some, there's a really interesting scene where the 16-year-old TJ has this conversation with Cordell about, the difference, what he said, like, why would you choose a D over a P? And it
Yeah.
was a very interesting conversation, about, how he came to leave his family and his wife to be with, another man.
And it's that conversation is really dynamic. It's between Cordell and EJ. They're outside and kind of Dwayne has told EJ that he can live in this house. He just needs to talk to Cordell first. But rather than wait and let them have that conversation in private, EJ kind of springs this conversation on Cordell while they're outside, and it starts with this kind of exchange about, like, how did you get this way, why did you leave your life behind, all very real, reasonable questions, I think, to be
Yeah.
asking, particularly if you're a kid and this is perhaps your first exposure to that. um, but then those questions get answered, and that conversation really comes down to, like, uh, Cordell accuses EJ of having stolen some money, when they were there in the past, and it blows up into this explosive conversation about kind of their differences. And then EJ eventually storms off, which is kind of where that's the big dramatic thing of the first act.
Right. And that was wasn't Dwayne sort of on the other side of the invisible wall, just kind of doing things
That's
while they're
right.
talking about him, and so that was really interesting. He was just kind of puttering around the kitchen, but yeah, that whole relationship starts to kind of I don't want to say fray, but show some cracks when it comes down to, like, how willing Cordell is to accommodate, basically Dwayne's family.
Agreed, because he says that he left his family to start anew and wants to be here with Dwayne. He didn't sign up to be a dad again, which is what he accuses Dwayne of asking him to do with EJ. And because we learn throughout the course of the first act that EJ's mom has died. She was killed at the hands of the police,
Right.
and both Dwayne as well as EJ's father, TJ, they both blame themselves for the situation. But whereas Dwayne is kind of stepping up and being more present in EJ Everett's life, TJ's kind of stepped back. He's not as present. He shows up every now and then to give his son money. But he's not being he's kind of taken that step back once his wife dies.
Right. And so that relationship between TJ and his son EJ is really interesting because it starts out you just think, so TJ is kind of a near do well. I think it sounds like he's been in and out of prison, and he's, they're always moving around. They keep getting evicted. The phone keeps getting turned off. That kind of stuff. But then that really evolves into something. So there's a lot of character development just with TJ throughout the show, and Jacques Jean Mary, who plays EJ, is I just love him. He's such a great character. And he starts out like, he's this black kid that stole money, and then he's like, look, I was hungry,
Yeah.
and he's really wanting to change, his situation, and he realizes he can't do it by staying with his dad.
Yeah, that journey that EJ goes on is really powerful, as well as this parallel journey that TJ goes on, where he's kind of he asks Dwayne, like, am I a good dad? Like,
Yeah.
have I lived up to my end of the bargain? Because which is just heartbreaking, because you see that in TJ's mind, like, he's like, I'm more present for my son than my dad ever was. I'm more present than your parents ever were. Like, why are you holding me to this unreal expectation that you didn't even ever experience? You don't have
Right.
kids, Dwayne. How do you get to judge me? And I thought that was such a It was a great conversation, very powerfully acted, and masterfully directed by Timothy Douglas, who I kind of want to go. Yeah, I kind of want to talk transition if we can into some of the staging, because
Yeah,
I think that what they're able to do in the round and kind of how they create this house that also has additional rooms that kind of either come in from the side, like there's a bed that's clearly on this kind of rolling system, so
right.
it can roll in and out of the scene. There's this kind of shed over on one side to kind of create a outdoor backyard area for the characters to be in alongside a basketball hoop. And I just thought that the staging was very fluid. There's often moments where scenes will be happening in one part of the stage, but there are other characters on just like living in the background in other parts of the stage that just made it incredibly visually engaging.
Yeah. So this set was by Tony Sisek, who has worked in this space with Rubicon and Choir Boy were two. I didn't see Color Purple, but he did that in there, I think, as well. And really nice set. I will say one thing. It's not necessarily a criticism, but at one point I looked up and I realized there were these four, like, I don't know, dormer windows at top that seemed kind of superfluous. I don't think they really added much to the set, but I guess if you looked up, you're like, okay, there's the top of the house. But yeah, really, really nicely done. Very functional, and there was a whole lot of in and out with all that stuff there. And sound by Melanie Chen Cole was really solid, as well as the costumes by Rodrigo Munoz. As you were noting that Isam had some really great ones, but they all did. They had these Hot Wing King shirts that they had at one point that were very funny.
That's right. That got a
Yeah.
big laugh from the audience when they revealed, because they look like something that Guy Fieri would wear from Diners,
Yeah.
Drive-ins, and Guy. It's that like very loud, flames everywhere, but also
Yes.
a couple sequins thrown in.
Yeah, and EJ was like, hey, I ain't wearing that. Yeah. So, but yeah, I have to say that by the time, this is one of those plays where by the time it ended, I was just so loving all the characters, and they all were just great. I just wanted to go give them all a hug. They were really, they were just really told a great story, and there might have been a little bit of unevenness between the high drama and the high comedy, I guess, in places. But I don't know. How did you feel about that?
Yeah, so this is a newer play, as you mentioned, written by Cattery Hall. It premiered in February 2022, so
Ouch.
off
No,
Broadway, right.
2020.
Oh, excuse me. You're
Yes.
right, Alex.
Yes.
2020, right before the
Worst
pandemic. It
time to
just
open a
made the
show.
cut. Yeah, exactly. It had to actually end its run prematurely due to
Yeah.
COVID-19 pandemic related reasons.
Yep.
But production was eventually able to remount in 2022. This script won the 2021 Pulitzer Prize for drama.
Yeah.
Um, which is a pretty big deal, but I found a little bit surprising after seeing the script in action on stage, because I agree with what you said just a second ago, is that it's a little bit uneven in terms of its kind of execution from a script standpoint. I would say that there's really two kind of stories that are going on. There's this kind of s- hot wing battle in which they're trying to prepare a spicy Cajun Alfredo wing with bourbon infused bacon. And then there is this family drama, which we spent a lot of time already discussing. And I think that the family drama elements in this play work a lot. They feel a lot more organic and fleshed out than the kind of competition aspect, which I think kind of it's mined largely for comedy, particularly in the second act, after one of the characters adds an ungodly amount of spice to
Yes.
the wings, and then the characters have to deal with the
The-
repercussions
right.
of that. But I oftentimes felt like when that plot started to kick into gear, I wanted to be like, stop the comedy for a second. We need to like go back and focus on what that character just said. I want to sit in that moment a little bit, which is interesting because it's not to say that the comedic moments weren't well executed. There's some hilarious milk drinking gags that
Yeah.
are done throughout the show, but it sometimes felt that those moments maybe cheapened or forced us to cut away from a really interesting exchange or interaction that was just getting started in another room, so that we could get back to that kind of conceit of the hot wing competition.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think there's definitely something to be said there. It didn't bother me a whole lot just because I was enjoying all of the action so much, But yeah, the hot wing and some of those gags. I mean, it's always funny when somebody eats something really hot. anybody can play that comic scene out, but they have a couple of really good ones in there, and so it does have a kind of a little bit of a surprise ending in terms of who becomes the Hot Wing King, which we won't reveal here. But yeah, overall, just a really great show. I really enjoyed what it said about male relationships, and particularly with Black men, who I think, they can be seen as leaning towards the hyper masculine. So it was interesting that a female playwright was able to capture the moment of sensitivity where these guys are letting their guard down and revealing their feelings, even if it's somewhat reluctantly.
Yeah, I think that's the high point of the play for me, and those kind of exchanges come in those more dramatic moments, in which I feel, and that's why I feel that sometimes the comedy kind of wasn't my favorite part of this production, that's totally fine. I think that because I think that so many of the other elements are so strong, and I care so much about these characters, that by the end of the play, I was very much in the same place as you. I was like, damn, I just want to go grab a beer with these guys afterwards and just sit down, talk it out. Like, seems like they got a lot going on. So just want to be like, I'm here for you, buddy. It's going to be all right.
Yeah. Yeah, and I will also say that one of the nice things about the Killstrom Theater is you're so close to the action. There's not a bad seat in the house there. And I happen to be right by one of the entrances as they were going off, and I was just watching some of the actors going off were just so thrilled by the reception that they got. They got a really enthusiastic standing O, which they deserved, and it just looked like they had a great time doing this and really enjoyed telling the story. And yeah, I thought that was really, really cool to see. And some of the scenes that they seemed like there were some genuine tears that the actors were kicking out. So
some genuine tears that the actors were whipping out, and because the Killstrom is so close and so intimate, and you're in that round, sound travels, so you can hear crying clear as day in the audience. And oh boy, by the time we got into the third act, people were weeping in the crowd all around us.
I might have had to wipe my eye at one point.
Alex, you softy over there, Mr. Softy.
All right, well, it's the Hot Wing King. It's a drama that's very funny at the Killstrom Theater at the Denver Center. It runs through May 25th. And I think, very enthusiastic response from the crowd and us as well. Really a fun show to go see.
Yeah, maybe consider grabbing some hot wings before or after the show. Make it a fully immersive experience.
Yeah, don't forget your milk.
There we go.
Well, we will be back next week with our regularly scheduled bigger podcast, and we'll see you then.